In a cozy nest by the riverbank, a mother duck watched over her clutch of eggs. As the warm summer wind caressed the reeds, tiny cracks appeared on the shells, and one by one, fluffy ducklings emerged. But one egg remained, larger and more stubborn than the rest. "Oh, you troublesome thing," the mother duck clucked, her feathers ruffling with concern. "Will you never hatch?" Suddenly the large egg shuddered violently. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, and with a sound like tearing metal, it split open. What emerged was no duckling. It was a creature of nightmare, shadow dark with too many limbs and eyes that glowed like dying stars. "Well," the mother duck said hesitantly, "ugly or not, it's mine. Into the water you go." As the ducklings waddled towards the river, jeers and snickers erupted from the farmyard. The ugly duckling's siblings joined in, taunting, "You don't belong here, ugly one." But as the ugly duckling's many feet touched the cool water, something extraordinary happened. Suddenly, the world around him exploded into a cacophony of voices. Not just the quacks and honks of waterfowl, but the rustling whispers of the reeds, the gurgling laughter of the river, and even the silent ancient wisdom of the gnarled oak tree on the bank. Overwhelmed, the duckling ducked his head underwater, only to find the fish engaged in a lively debate about the nature of wetness. He surfaced with a gasp, eyes wide with wonder and confusion. "What's wrong with you?" his mother asked, concerned by his odd behavior. I can hear everything," the ugly duckling stammered. "The trees, the fish, even the rocks. They're all talking." His mother exchanged worried glances with the other ducks. Now, she said gently. "Don't let your imagination run wild. It's not proper for a duck to have such fanciful ideas." But the ugly duckling couldn't silence the voices. Soon enough, as days passed, he found himself mediating disputes between squabbling fish, consoling a willow tree, mourning its fallen branches, and discussing the nature of flight with earthworms who had never seen the sky. As days passed, the ugly duckling grew at an alarming rate, his form constantly shifting and changing. The farm animals watched with growing unease as he explored his surroundings, leaving a trail of withered grass in his wake. The brave kitty, whom the others called Feather, found herself drawn to the strange being. One evening, as the creature sat by the pond, Feather approached. "Why do you come here?" Feather asked. The creature's many eyes blinked in sequence. "I see my reflection, but I don't understand what I am. Everything here has a place, a purpose. What's mine?" Feather considered this. "Does everyone need a predetermined purpose? Maybe your purpose is to find your own way." One day, while the ugly duckling sat alone by the river, he noticed something strange in the water. The usually clear and sparkling river had turned murky, carrying whispers of despair and destruction. The duckling dipped his many feet into the water and was overwhelmed by the voices of lands far away, places that had been seized and corrupted by an ancient evil that had suddenly awakened from its endless sleep. As he listened, he heard tales of burning forests, withered fields, and rivers turned to poison. The water itself seemed to carry the taint of this malevolent presence. The wind, too, brought with it the scent of decay, and the cries of creatures driven mad by the horrors they had witnessed. Even the birds flying overhead, usually so full of songs, now passed silently, their eyes wide with fear. The ugly duckling realized that this dark force was not just a distant threat, but was slowly creeping closer, its influence spreading like a disease. He knew he had to act before it reached his home and destroyed everything he held dear. Even those who mocked him, bullied him, and hated him all these years did not deserve to be swallowed by a living nightmare. Determined to protect the farm, the duckling began to train himself. He used his unique ability to communicate with all living things to gather knowledge and strength. He learned from the reeds how to bend, but not break, from the fish how to move swiftly and silently, and from the ancient oak how to stand firm against any storm. With each passing day, the duckling became stronger and more confident. He knew that the battle ahead would be difficult, but he was ready to face the cosmic horror and protect the delicate web of life that made the world so enigmatic and beautiful. What he failed to notice was how his enemy had already begun to manifest itself, not through direct confrontation, but through subtle infiltration. The ancient evil worked methodically, sending its influence like tendrils into the farm, testing defenses and identifying threats to its power. Having sensed the duckling's potential, it had already marked him for elimination. While the other animals and humans remained oblivious to its presence, the dark entity slowly poisoned their minds against the ugly duckling, determined to destroy its greatest threat before he could reach his full strength. As the ugly duckling grew, his strange powers became more pronounced, and with them came fear and hostility from the creatures around him. Whispers of unease spread through the farm. The ducks and geese avoided him, the sheep muttered nervously in their pens, and even the chickens, usually indifferent to such things, eyed him with suspicion. One evening, under the ominous glow of a crimson sunset, a group of farm animals approached the ugly duckling. At their head was the chief farmer, his eyes clouded by a dark, otherworldly fog. The farmer's voice, heavy with greed and malice, thundered, "You are no mere beast. You are something unnatural, and unnatural things are meant to be exploited or destroyed." Before the ugly duckling could respond, his mother stepped forward, her eyes filled with cold dread. "We should have driven you out the moment you hatched. Now look at what you've done, twisting our lives, warping our land." The other farm animals nodded, emboldened by her words. "Why must I suffer for being what I am?" the ugly duckling asked, his voice trembling but resolute. "I never asked to be born here. Why do you hate me for existing?" His words fell on deaf ears as the farmer raised a hand, signaling the others to attack. The animals surged forward, their fear morphing into violence. Hooves pounded the ground, beaks snapped, and claws raked the air. The ugly duckling, overwhelmed, instinctively unleashed his powers. The earth trembled, grass withered beneath him, and waves of energy rippled outward, throwing his attackers back. But the assault did not stop. His siblings lunged at him, their once playful jabs now savage bites. His own mother screeched, "You're a curse, a plague upon us all." Her words struck harder than any blow, and the ugly duckling's vision blurred with rage and sorrow. Tentacles of dimmed light lashed out from his body, sending animals scattering. In the chaos, Feather, the brave kitty, leaped in front of the ugly duckling. "Stop this madness!" she cried. "Can't you see what you're doing? You're becoming the very thing they accuse you of." Her eyes, filled with both fear and compassion, locked onto his glowing ones. "They don't understand you, but does that give you the right to harm them?" The ugly duckling froze, his rippling form quivering with anguish. "They want to destroy me," he said softly, his voice barely audible above the din. "Am I to let them?" Feather shook her head. "No, but neither must you destroy them. Their fear blinds them, but your power must not blind you. You can choose what you become, something greater than their hatred." Her words pierced the fog of his fury, and the ugly duckling let his tentacles fall limp. The animals, seeing him disarmed, hesitated, unsure whether to continue their attack. The farmer, still under the dark entity's influence, snarled in frustration. Grabbing a torch, he shouted, "We'll finish this once and for all," and advanced on the ugly duckling. Before he could strike, the ugly duckling raised a trembling limb. With a thought, the ground softened beneath the farmer's feet, causing him to stumble and drop the torch. The fire sputtered out harmlessly in the mud. The farmer glared at the creature but found himself unable to move, as if some unseen force held him back. The ugly duckling turned to the others, his glowing eyes dimmed with sadness, but burning with determination. "I do not want to hurt you," he said. "I only want to understand what I am, and I will stay to protect this place, whether you accept me or not, because something far worse than me is coming." Feather stepped forward, her voice firm. "We all have our fears and our failings, but those failings don't define us. How we face them does. Look closer at your hearts. Is it truly the duckling you fear, or something else pushing you toward this hatred? The farmyard fell silent, the animals frozen between fear and guilt. Slowly, one by one, they retreated, their aggression replaced by an uneasy tension. Even the mother duck, who had spoken so harshly before, turned away, her face unreadable. As the ugly duckling stood his ground in the aftermath, the night grew unnaturally still. The animal's anger had faded into a hollow silence, but the oppressive atmosphere remained. The farmer and the others exchanged uneasy glances, their fear now laced with confusion. Feather, still trembling, stepped closer to the ugly duckling. "You showed them true strength," she said quietly, her voice carrying both relief and pride. "Not by running, but by standing firm against their fear." But before he could respond, the sky above began to churn, an ominous energy rippling through the air. The ugly duckling froze as he felt it, a presence far greater, far darker than anything he'd encountered before. The earth trembled beneath his feet, and the animals scattered, their cries lost in the rising wind. Feather's eyes widened. "What is that?" The ugly duckling didn't answer. He could feel it pulling at him, a force that resonated with the darkest parts of his being. His powers, his very existence, seemed like a mere echo of this vast, malevolent presence. The malevolent cosmic entity, whose plans to finish the ugly duckling by the hands of the others were swept away, started taking form. A swirling vortex of darkness appeared overhead that threatened to swallow the farm whole. As panic erupted in the farmyard, the ugly duckling witnessed a sight that chilled his many hearts. The beautiful swans, creatures he had long admired, were gliding towards the vortex with an unnatural grace, their eyes consumed by swirling void. "Join us in transcendence," they sang in hollow, ethereal voices. "Let the void embrace you, free from the chains of existence." The cosmic entity had chosen its prey with cruel precision, corrupting these majestic creatures first. It sought to break the duckling's spirit by perverting the very beauty that had once given him hope. The ugly duckling felt the seductive pull of their song, the promise of endless peace in oblivion. But through this darkness came other voices. The desperate chorus of ducks, fish, and even the ancient oak tree, their cries anchoring him to life itself. With a defiant roar, the ugly duckling surged forward. His form became a blur of motion, his many limbs striking at the writhing shadows of the vortex. "Life's beauty lies in its imperfection," he called to the swans, his voice filled with conviction. "In our struggles and connections, in how we grow and change together. That's where true meaning lives." One by one, the swans blinked, awakening from their trance. They turned to aid the ugly duckling, their graceful necks and wings joining the battle against the cosmic horror. The fight raged on, reality itself seeming to warp and bend around them. The duckling drew strength from every blade of grass, every drop of water in the river, channeling the collective will to survive. Finally, with a mighty cry that echoed across dimensions, the ugly duckling delivered a final devastating blow. The vortex imploded, collapsing in on itself with a sound like the universe sighing. As peace settled over the farm, the ugly duckling found himself changed. His feathers had taken on an iridescent sheen that seemed to shimmer between realities. He was neither duck nor swan, but something entirely new. "What happens now?" asked Kitty Feather, eyes wide with wonder. The cosmic duckling smiled. "Now we learn to truly see each other. We nurture the connections that bind us all." And with that, he stepped into the space between worlds, ready to serve as a bridge between the seen and unseen, the physical and metaphysical. And so, dear friend, the next time you pass a pond and see a duck that looks a little different, take a moment to listen. You might just hear the whispers of the universe, reminding you that we are all far more than we know.